Welcome everybody to Martinis with Scott, a show about winning momentum in business and in life. Today we're going to have a great show. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a case study an interim case study on Roofers World, Red Box Hardware Inc., which owns the brand Roofers World. Roofers World, you can look them up at roofersworld.com. And this company is a privately owned by me, Ottawa, Canada-based company that specializes in innovative roofing tools, fall protection products, systems designed to satisfy the needs of the roofing industry in Canada. In the United States, our two marquee products would be the ladder mount, which is designed to sit on a gutter. You put it up with this pole handle there, sits on a gutter, and it stabilizes the top of the ladder and protects the gutters from being crushed. And the second tool would be 25-year now, the original Red Ripper, which is a shovel handle with a metal head. You see there, that's upside down on my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Nope. Anyways, the original Red Ripper, the best pro tools in the roofing business. This ladder mount, if you have a ladder in a gutter, you need to own one of these things. It's a terrific product, and we have the IP, the patents on it. You can't get it anywhere else. So I took over Roofers World last May or June. I stepped in as a president. I'd been financing it for a long time before that, but things weren't going well. The company needed a turnaround. As I said, I stepped in last May, and it's been a terrific experience. Things are going well. Since then, our supply chain has been entirely rebuilt and is working. Our fill rates have gone to 100%. If you order a product today, we're probably shipping it this afternoon. And that's from fill rates of pretty much zero by the time I took over. Our contribution margin, our margins are up. Our overhead is down. Revenue's been pretty good. So on a whole, we're now, whereas we lost money forever, we're now breaking even, making a little bit of money pre-COVID, and we're surviving through COVID just fine. In general, we're feeling pretty good about the company, Roofers World, and its direction at this time. And and the culture and the feeling within the company is just night and day from what it used to be. That whole feeling of being lost, of being disoriented, of not seeing a way out, a light at the end of the tunnel. That's all gone. Things are lighter. They're more fun. The people are excited and they're happy to be at work. And it's just a whole different change of attitude and of culture and of stress levels and of fun levels, all to the positive. And not because we were where we are. It's not because we are where we want to be in an absolute sense. We're not rich and famous. We're not making a bunch of money yet. I mean, we're just hitting break even and starting to make a little bit of money. But it's the direction. Things are getting better every day. And as I tell you all the time, it's about momentum. Where you're going, the direction you're heading is far more important than where you are. All right, and Roofers World is a great example of that. So in this show, we discuss some of my diagnostic process for underperforming businesses, my approach to profit, contribution margin, overheads, revenue, in that order. We generally have some fun because Lucie is a great guest to talk to. She's dynamic and she's always fun. She runs her own podcast, by the way. I don't know what it is, but maybe we can get that in the notes if Lucie sends me a link. So Lucie Quigley is my guest, Executive Vice President of Roofers World. Lucie joined Roofers in 2018, I believe, as a marketing manager, and I made her EVP, Executive Vice President, in May 2019 when I took over. We cleaned house a little bit and revamped the management team, largely under Lucie's leadership on the ground in Ottawa. And that's been a terrific move so far. Lucie has experience in marketing, not only at Roofers, but in hardware retail, food services. She has an entrepreneurial mindset, and because of that, she owned her own marketing agency with her husband for 5 years, which they sold, I believe, around 99, 2000, somewhere in there. In the notes here, it says before the tech bubble burst. That would have been 2001. Lucie's trained in Six Sigma techniques and tools for process improvement. She's trained to the black belt level And she didn't tell me this, but I note that she volunteers and spends a great deal of her time as an animal rescue worker rescuing sick and injured animals and getting them the help that they need. Enough of the introductions. Enjoy the show. We're going to do a couple of follow-ups on the Roofers World case study. I think it's good to bring into the story as we go along. We have challenges that we're facing still, COVID, getting our B2C model working. We set up an online store during self-isolation here, expanding into the US. We got all sorts of things and challenges that we need to deal with. And hopefully the plan here is to have you follow along with that. Enjoy the show. Please subscribe. Martinis with Scott. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Hey, Lucie, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm great, Scott. How are you?
I'm very well. Looks like you're sitting in the Roofers World office with a ladder mount behind you and a red ripper.
I am. I ventured into the office today. The guys left so that I am respecting social distancing. But yes, I am in Roofers World HQ today.
So you shut down manufacturing for the show, is what you're saying. You threw all the guys out.
No, I would never do that.
All right. Well, cheers to you. I don't know if you're having a drink or what you're up. Oh, look at you with your red wine. Definitely. I ran out of olives, so I'm just on a straight glass of vodka at this point.
Oh, well, there you go. I have a Wolf Blast Yellow Label today.
Ah, very good. Very good. So you're in Ottawa, and that's where Roofers World is headquartered. And that's what we're going to talk about today is Roofers World, the business that you operate from your lofty chair of EVP. But before we get into that, why don't you give us just 2 minutes on your background so the listeners know where you're coming from and how you got yourself into this position.
Okay, so my background is mainly in marketing. However, I am also trained in Six Sigma. I'm trained at the black belt level and certified at the green belt level. I do also bring an entrepreneurial mindset to the business because I did own and operate a design agency with my husband for 5 years here in Ottawa prior to the high-tech bubble burst in 2001. So I have a very diverse background. I originally joined Roofers World in January of 2018 in a marketing capacity, and then transitioned to a new role early last year. Great.
And so the Martinis with Scott channel, which you are also a podcaster, so you've been following Martinis with Scott and its evolution a little bit, but you know, a couple of the themes of my career and hopefully of this show are that momentum is everything in business. So it's not the absolute where you are today or absolutely where you want to be tomorrow or 3 years from now, but the direction that you're heading changes everything, right? And so that's one theme. Another theme is that complete feeling of being lost and disorientation and not even knowing which way to go and there being no hope. There's a way out of that. And that there's a methodology, a thought process, a science as much as an art to turnarounds. And if you think about those three themes, Roofers World, which is the brand, it's owned by Redbox Hardware. So if in this show we talk about roofers and Redbox, they're interchangeable to us, but the brand is Roofers World. Roofers World is such an amazing case study on those three themes: direction, disorientation, and a methodology for executing a turnaround. Do you make some sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
All right. So with that in mind, so that's where we're going to go today in this conversation. At least that's where we'll try to go. Who knows? Tell us a bit about Redbox / Roofers World, the brand.
So Roofers World is a wholesale manufacturing company with two signature products. They actually are both over my shoulders. We have the ladder mount, which is the yellow device, which was originally started selling in 2012. And that is a device that you put into your gutter to prevent your ladder from slipping. And it also prevents your gutters from being damaged. And that was engineered because there was they identified a need in the marketplace because of ladder injuries. There's about 500,000 hospitalizations every year due to ladder injuries. And that's where this product stemmed from. And then the other product is the red, it's a bizarre looking shovel, which is our Red Ripper. And what that is it's a shingle removal tool that removes your shingles, your staples, your nails, your screws, everything in one pass. And the reason why that product was designed and engineered was traditionally roofers were using a combination of pitchforks, claw hammers, whatever they can get their hands on to do their job. This replaces a lot of tools, so the roofer then has a lot of efficiency in what they're doing when it comes to removing asphalt shingles.
Right. And both of those tools, excuse me, and the other harnesses and safety and functional equipment that we would sell to roofers, in terms of branding, pro quality, top of the market, this is the best stuff you can buy, right? I mean, that's the whole point of Roofers World.
Most definitely. Both of them are, the ladder mount, there's pretty much, that's the only one available on the market. And the Red Ripper, it's definitely best in class. I believe it was pretty much the first one to market. It has been copied, but nobody can match the quality that we offer in our products.
Yeah. Okay. So you will recall that Martinis with Scott now is into its second year. And you and I did this show before, and it feels like almost a year ago or 9 months ago. And we threatened to do it every quarter as a follow-up to the turnaround. And then the world conspired against us. For example, we were in Dallas in a cigar bar, waiting for a room, a meeting room in the back of the cigar place that was promised to me, and some members took the room. And so we were going to have I took you to a steakhouse, and you're largely vegan, and a cigar place and you don't smoke. And then we didn't get to do a show, so we just sat there listening to music all night, and so we never got to follow up. And in any event, I think the show has evolved, and it's gotten way more refined, and it's gotten more viewership. So it's a great opportunity just to go back and redo, but do it better and more fulsome. And we're a year into the turnaround now. Has it been a year? Almost, right? Like 10 months, 11 months, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. We sort of hit that. We're hitting that 1 year mark. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have better information, and so let's get at it. I just wanted to put that caveat that we, if you've heard this before, if you've been listening from day one, you've lost me. I think I'm good here.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
You're back. You just saw it. Yeah. Okay. We're all good now.
Yep.
All right. No worries. Anyways, so for my mother, who's been listening from day one, this will be a bit of a repeat, but for everybody else, it's going to be new. And let's get at it. So remind me, when did you join Roofers World?
January 2018.
Okay, January 2018. So you spent all of 2018 there, which was a disaster, and half of 2019 there, which was a disaster. And then we started the turnaround. Is that fair to say?
That's bang on.
Okay, now I'm going to want you to describe what you saw at Roofers World for that year and a half. But before you do, I'm going to give some numbers out to people that you probably don't even know these numbers. Because I talk about a formula for how you should approach making more money. Number one is so it's contribution margin, overhead, and revenue in that order. Okay, so it's not we need to sell more, which you will recall from 2018 was all you ever heard is we need to sell more. It's the other way around. Margin, overhead, revenue is how you need to think about things. Our contribution margin historically, before we started the turnaround, was running about 34%. And I won't get into the details for everybody of the nuance of contribution margin, but basically it's your revenue minus your variable costs, which would be direct materials, freight, direct labor, sales commissions, everything that's variable equals your contribution margin in dollars. And if you divide that by your revenue, you get a percentage. I'm not giving any dollars out today, but for a flavor, 34%, which is not awesome, but not terrible, 34%. Our overhead was 80% of our revenue historically. Okay. Yeah. Now, you wouldn't normally measure fixed cost by percentage of revenue, it sort of half doesn't make sense. But if you figure out that for every $100 you sell, you have $34 left over, that's your contribution margin. And then you had $80 of fixed costs, right? So it's pretty easy to see where your problem lies mathematically from a profit.
Yeah.
So we had negative, so we were losing at an EBITDA level, and our EBITDA negative margin was about 25%, which is a hefty loss. So those are some numbers. Why don't you talk about, you may not have known those numbers in that sort of, it was before your time and financial information wasn't being disclosed to you. But what did you see in the past Rupert's World that you saw as being problems and highlighting the trouble that this company was in?
The major problems, it was a complete lack of management and planning. The management that was in place didn't have a plan. They thought they did, but they didn't. And then that sort of cascaded into other problems with our vendors. We had poor vendor relationships. They weren't being communicated with properly. They weren't being paid properly. Customer service was a shambles. Orders would come in and they'd be handed off to the warehouse, and it was basically, you know, that's your problem now. There was no ownership in the process. And customers weren't being told the truth. They were being told that their orders would ship next week, when really we had such a massive backlog of orders and a complete lack of inventory coming in. We could not keep our head above water. So our vendors were mad at us, our customers were mad at us, and you know, we were barely treading water, barely.
We were not treading water. We were sinking.
We were sinking.
Right.
I was pretty sure that we were sinking quicker than, I'll say, the Titanic. But yeah, it wasn't.
Well,
a good
it's
thing.
important. It's important because, again, one of my themes is momentum. I just believe in this with all of my soul. And you know, so there's 3 stages of momentum. You could be going down, you could be going up, or you could just be in limbo in between. And you know, only 1 out of 3 of those is good. But Rupert's World was not treading water in between, if you were being fair about it.
No.
Right, with the numbers that I gave you. So I know you weren't the owner of the business and you weren't the president or, you know, EVP on the ground running the place. But what was your sense of that as an employee in terms of this concept of being disoriented and not knowing where to go, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and this is just a mess and we'll never be able to fix it? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's the feeling people have in that situation.
Definitely. I mean, anytime that you lack in management and you lack in any plan and process, what that does, it creates the environment of chaos. And as an employee, you're constantly in fear of, am I going to have a job tomorrow? And
the stress of firefighting.
Yeah, constantly. And I mean, when the existing management at the time wouldn't communicate with customers, I was then the front person that was taking the heat for everything. And that's not a pleasant environment to be in.
And it puts you in a position where you're trying not to lie, but you're probably going to be wrong.
Oh, I knew I was wrong. I was wrong. But you know, it's a really difficult position to be put in where, you know, you're being thrown to the wolves and you have no confidence or information that you're ever going to be able to deliver on these orders that customers have entrusted in you.
Yeah. Okay. I had in my notes fill rates. What were our fill rates? 0? 10%? Like I know there's no math on that.
Did you have a negative fill rate?
We were just getting returns.
I mean, we had such, I can't even begin to communicate the backlog that we had. It was thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of backlogs, that when we were actually getting product in, it was a case of having to pick and choose who can we give what. And
there was 2 months where I gave you a really hard time about that allocation. And Remember that?
Oh yeah. I don't
All
forget.
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
fill rates, culture of lies,
yeah.
right? And incompetence. And I always see that in troubled company. And it's not even, if we were to give people the benefit of the doubt, it's not even that they woke up in the morning and wanted to lie, but it's that whole slippery slope of, I mean, look at you. You're a great person. I know you well now. You don't ever want to lie to anybody, but you're put in a position where you know you're going to be wrong, and someone could accuse you after the fact of having lied to them, right?
Definitely.
And,
Definitely.
yeah. So it's not like I'm calling someone a liar, even though in our situation maybe we had a liar, but there's a culture of dishonesty
Mistrust.
and not being truthful. Okay. I've forgotten about, I had it in here, no follow-up on sales leads, and which is true. But also you highlighted a much more important point, was a complete disconnect between the guy who was running the place, which was the sales side, and production. Basically, he'd sell a bunch of stuff, pat himself on the back, and we had no hope of shipping it ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I would actually say that what was happening at the time, it wasn't sales, it was order taking.
Yes.
It was just waiting for an order to come in, hand a piece of paper to the warehouse, and then push the problem onto somebody else. There was nothing proactive in our sales process. There was no customer service. There's no engagement.
Right. And if anybody, unless anybody thinks there's no stress associated with this crap, in every file I've ever done, every turnaround I've ever done for 30 years, if it's a fill rate issue, the salesperson gets burnt out and becomes a unproductive, sometimes not a good person, right? If it's a balance sheet issue, a financial issue, the first person to go is the controller / CFO, right? For the exact same reason. They're taking the heat, they're taking the stress. The life of a good controller in a serious financial turnaround is about 6 months. Like, it's the odd person that survives that level of stress with people phoning them all the time. So this is serious stuff at a personal level. And the reason I keep harping on that is, if you're stressed and you can't see any hope, you don't make good decisions, or any decisions.
No.
Right. All right. So April-ish 2019, Scott decides enough is enough. I need to start turning this company around. So first thing you do is, because I was funding it at the time and obviously not happy with the direction. So the first thing you do in a turnaround is you stop the bleeding, right? And a temporary stopping of the bleeding. In other words, you just stop paying things. And you buy yourself like a week just to take a breath and try and figure out what you're going to do. And then you move into the turnaround phase. And the turnaround phase is, I have a sort of a 3-part plan for turnarounds. One is know where you want to be, say, a year from now. 2 is diagnose why you're not there already. And 3 is take action. All right. So the first thing I did was I called you, right? And I said, come to Toronto and let's meet in my office. And let's go over what this company might look like in plan B a year from now. Do you recall that?
I do, yeah.
And you had a plan in place? Even though
Yeah.
that wasn't your job, you showed up and you said, here's what I think you're going to ask, and here's my ideas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I had enough time to fully understand the problems with the organization at the time, and I came prepared to speak to those points.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things I hope I pushed you in direction of is if you're doing $1 million of revenue, I'm not talking about this company, just hypothetically, if you're doing $1 million of revenue in a troubled business, what everybody does, and what this company certainly did, is they said, man, if we were just doing $1.5 million this year and then 3 the next, we're golden. Look at the math on that. It's great. What they don't do in a turnaround, what you need to do is say, what happens if I did 800,000 of revenue, right? What if I did 70, 80%, which is a no-brainer. There's no way I can't do $800,000 of revenue based on $1 million before. And again, this is just a hypothetical numbers and not roofers. How do I make money at this 80% of my revenue? And that's sort of the analysis we did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we sort of looked at different opportunities of, you know, what we had to do if we only met $800,000 in sales. What would that look like?
Yeah.
And how we would achieve
in
it.
that hypothetical example. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that sort of 70-80% level, and you literally went through customer by customer. Here's our big box accounts. There's Home Depots. Here's the ABCs, and you know, these are the people we should work with. These are the people we should not work with, and these are no-brainers, right? And we said, okay, now contribution margin, overheads, revenue. Well, we dealt with the revenue sort of last by saying, okay, it's going to go down, and it's going to be stable.
Right.
How do we make money? And you know, it became pretty clear that we could increase our margin ultimately through price increases, but that would be a problem because of fill rates and just general confidence. We could reduce the cost of our direct materials, which we buy out of China. Well, that's a problem because we haven't paid our suppliers, and we have two main ones. We're in a lawsuit with one, and the other one, you know, we're not doing a great job staying on top of them. Freight is a huge variable cost for this company. We had a bunch of storage charges. We had brokers that were unpaid. We had shipping companies that were unpaid. But those are the things we need to attack if we're going to improve our margins. And then overheads. That was the big low-hanging fruit for us in this company. We were built to do 3 times the revenue. At the end of the day, if you think about it, our fixed costs, as I said, we're 80% of our revenue. So, you know, and the problem in changing the overhead is the entire organization was tied to one key employee who refused to change, was hoarding all information, and wasn't telling the truth, to be blunt about it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it.
Okay. So you said if we could do this, that, and the other thing, reduce our overheads, we could start making money. Now, when I called you in for that meeting, did you believe that change could happen?
If certain things took place, then I knew everything that I saw in this company, you know, our products, some of the core people that we had here, I absolutely knew that if certain things took place, then we could turn this company around. I did believe it, but it came down to, you know, a massive change of what was going to happen under this roof. And it also came down to, you know, your willingness and your enthusiasm to make certain changes and to support us through that process. Yeah, definitely.
Right. Which had
if
to
it
be a
wasn't
question
for
for you,
leadership.
didn't it? Didn't it have to be a question for you? It should have been.
Whether or not you would do the changes?
Yeah, whether I would follow through. And
oh, for sure. I mean, at the time, we had limited conversations and contact. You know,
you and I personally, very little. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know,
so I was kind of some dude with the bank account coming out of nowhere and saying, enough's enough. What do you think about this? Right.
Yeah.
And I called you specifically because, you know, there's maybe 4 people at the time in that organization that I could have called. And you were the one that I knew least.
That's true.
No, but that's exactly the reason, right? So we don't have a history. And you were kind of the newest to the organization. Definitely. Right? And you came from outside, and I was thinking, man, she just must be on the hot seat there. And so, I mean, that was my thinking. So let's just talk to her and see what I learned.
Yeah.
Right. And what happens in every troubled company, the reason I got sort of taking us down this path isn't the solution. There's a methodology to this disorientation and how to get out of it, but it's never brain surgery. It's always a matter of belief, right? You have no backgrounds in turnaround, but you do have a background in entrepreneurialism. You got some smarts, you know, you got your head on your shoulders. You're a hustler, right? But it's kind of common sense. So the issue is, how do you overcome these, what appear to be massive issues? And I think that's the value that I bring to you in this team. That is like, how do I deal with that lawsuit? How do I deal with the fact that I haven't paid that supplier? What about the fact that my lease sucks? And what about this key employee issue and my fill rates? And, how do I tactically deal with all of those things? But you are able to identify all those things, maybe 80% of them at least.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think one of the biggest struggles, and I've seen this in other companies, and I'm sure you've come across it, is that they get so stuck in doing what they've always done. And there's a saying that I brought up I'm sure I said it in our last podcast together, and it was something that I heard from an old manager I had years ago. And he always used to say, "Hit me again, it feels so good when you stop." And that was the situation we were in, is that every time I challenged something or questioned something, it was, we always do it this way. This is what we always do. And it's like, but it's not working, so stop. And it seems like such a simple concept. That, a child could probably figure that one out, but it was just caught in this endless loop of making the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So that was step one, is we know where we want to be. We want to be, and again, when I talk about where you want to be with this company, I don't mean 3 years from now when everything's awesome. I'm talking about the turnaround phase, which, call it 1 year. We're going to take a step back so we can retrench, have a solid foundation as a smaller company, and then we're going to move forward from there. So we define what we wanted our revenue to be, how our overheads would look, and what our margins ought to be. And that spits out to how your balance sheet should look as well, but that's a lesser issue. And as long as you're not losing money, so your cash flow stays stable throughout that. And then you start talking about, okay, well, why aren't we there? Why aren't our margins where we want them to be? Why aren't our overheads where we want them to be? So we start going through the problems. I didn't do this with you, but this is what I do in a turnaround, and you will recognize this from the discussions and from the last year that we've done. So, we talk about margins, price increases. Okay. So what are the obstacles? Why haven't we increased our prices? Well, our fill rate sucks. Okay. So when we go to customers and we say we need to increase prices, we haven't done that in years, what are the customers going to say? Well, you don't even ship this product anyways, right? So we're not accepting that. Okay. And so that's the problem. And I think it's a red herring, but every single business I've ever been in with this issue, they refuse to go ask for price increases while they have fill rates. So whatever. So there's a confidence problem. Customers don't believe us because we lie to them all the time, right? So you can't go and say, here's what we're going to do to make your life better. That's not going to work. And our turnover within the stores is terrible because Roofers World has been a company that never heard of the word sell-through, right? They got to sell in, but they don't have sell-through. So what that means is if we have a listing, we get into Home Depot in whatever region, and we think, yeah, we made a sale, right? We're not thinking about, is anybody going to shop at that Home Depot to buy our products and what we do to support that. We don't treat Home Depot as a partner in distribution. We treat them as an end customer, which is just dead wrong. And so those were the obstacles to price increases. Anything else on the price increase side?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Is
yeah.
Where we were coming from is, how can we ask for a price increase when we haven't even shipped them the order they gave us 6 months ago?
Right. Reduce your direct material costs. These are our Chinese suppliers predominantly. We haven't paid them. We also lied to them. We're in litigation with one of them, who, by the way, is also stealing our IP, which is the whole reason we saved this business was the IP. We agree on that, right?
Definitely.
Right. And we got a bunch of, sorry, that's on the direct materials side. One of our other variable costs is we got a bunch of useless sales agents, a network all over North America, whose sole purpose is to suck 10% of sales that we're already making.
Right.
So there's a cost, and we think out of fear that we can't sell directly to Home Depot and merchandise directly to Home Depot, right? Okay. We got massive freight issues in terms of hostile warehousing storage. So remember that one? So the Chinese ship in the goods, and they don't release what the bill of lading, whatever that piece of paper is that lets it clear.
Yeah.
And until we pay them, and we don't pay them because we don't want to pay them and we don't have the money. And so it sits there at some guy's warehouse, and he starts charging you, $1,000 a day or 5,000, like some crazy amount of number.
Like a ransom.
Which, by the way, I learned is just made up. It's an entirely made up number without any legal authority whatsoever. And I proved my point. I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
So we got storage charges, we got freight people we haven't paid, we got brokers we haven't paid. And on the overhead side, overheads always come down to people in real estate. We already discussed this, but the reason, remember, we're diagnosing why we're not where we want to be, and you would agree with me, it's because we have one key guy who's running the whole place, and he refuses to make change, which was your point.
Yeah, you had one key person occupying a chair. I wouldn't say he was running the place. He was
that very chair that you're sitting in, I would say.
No, I got another chair.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and that was the source of the problem, is that it was eating away at the overhead. The person was, essentially taking the chair, but not performing.
Would you describe it as being worse than not performing? Because he was not performing, but he was keeping up with the people from performing. He was, this culture of lies starts at the top.
Yeah.
So there was no leadership there. And if there was, it was negative leadership. And he was hoarding information. Why didn't this company change this person years ago? The reason is because of a tremendous fear of what happens if he's not there.
Yeah. And he did have history with the company, but when you sort of dig down and really examine that history and find out what they were actually doing, they only appeared to be successful because of some of the people they surrounded themselves at the time. When those people were removed, it was basically you saw that person for what they really were.
Which you always do. You always do, in my experience, but you can't prove that. I can't prove that to you in advance. I can't prove it to shareholders in advance. I can't prove it to a client in other situations in advance. It's just true. It's just absolutely true. All right. So in summary, why are we not where we want to be? Culture of lies, self-dealing, theft, IP theft, right?
Yeah.
Unpaid suppliers in China, lawsuits, excessive storage charges, unpaid freight brokers, unpaid useless sales agents, too much payroll, too much rent, and a huge key man exposure. Am I missing anything? So
I think that's enough.
So it sounds daunting. That's the whole point, right? And
it was, yeah.
I had
there
a long
was
conversation.
A laundry list of problems, yeah.
Yeah. So action. So that's step 3 of the turnaround, is you focus on what's important. And again, margin, overhead. Last would be your revenue. You solve the problems that you came up with in the diagnosis. And as a precursor to that, as a premise, you have to be truthful. You have to be truthful to yourself, and you have to be truthful to your outside world, to your stakeholders. Not just yourself, but when I say yourself, I mean the leader, but the employees. You have to be truthful internally. You have to be truthful externally. You have to be truthful with your bank, with your customers, with your suppliers, right? So I pressed on you pretty hard, as I recall, to get a letter out to every customer we've ever heard of in the first week, right?
Yeah.
And what did it say?
Well, we basically outlined that there was a change in leadership, that person was no longer with the organization, and that I would be their main point of contact, and basically outlining everything that we were doing to regain their trust.
It actually, it communicated that we suck, and we know it, and we've made changes.
Yeah.
Is that more or less what it said?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I mean, and that comes back to, the sort of the honesty and the integrity, is just admitting.
Exactly.
And I don't know how many times I said that to customers, is, we let you down 100%. can't even argue with you. I wouldn't even want to try to argue with you on that point.
But we made changes.
Yes.
Because what you cannot do is you cannot convince an external stakeholder that you just can't convince them that you're going to change your ways if you don't make any changes. This is coming back to your definition of insanity. Well, why are you going to be different now? I don't know. We're just going to try harder, right? That's not going to work. We made a change.
Yeah.
Okay. So truthfulness, and that comes from the top. That comes from me, and it comes from you, right? It flows from me through you to everybody. And my sense is, I'm not there every day or rarely, but my sense is we have a pretty cohesive, honest group at this point.
Oh, like our team right now, we're a lean team. That was part of our turnaround process. We're a lean team, but we also, I'm the newest, as we said before, I'm the newest member of the team. Our other members have been here, I'm going to say 15 years plus. They've been with the organization, so they know the history. And that was one of the things that I've relied on heavily is constantly discussing with that team, okay, what's the take on this customer, or what's with this situation, or what have we done in the past, or what are your thoughts and recommendations on doing this?
Yeah. All right. So truthful from the top, more teamwork. Okay. Well, so let's get into our margin. That's number one. So I was able to negotiate with basically the two key suppliers. I was able to get run of one entirely by pushing back hard, and it cost us, at the end of the day, very little. I don't know if we're really done with that yet, but I'll win that at the end of the day. So I'm counting that in the win category. And the other supplier who, none of us have ever met him. He doesn't speak English, but he's acted with integrity. He's always shipped. He's worked hard to accommodate us. And we've just doubled down on him, and he's been great, right? And we were able to negotiate a price reduction from him for the extra volume. And so we accomplished reduce our direct materials objective with him. Aggressively went after the storage company, and we settled. I didn't pay everything, but we paid some of it, and in my gut was too much. But at the end of the day, we got rid of that warehouse. We got our goods free. We got a haircut on the amount owed, and we're never using that warehouse company again. So I'm calling that a tie. I'm not calling it a win, but we've moved on, and we've never had the issue since. All that back debt with the freight. So we switched freight companies. We found cheaper deals, so we reduced our costs there, and all that back debt we paid out at about 20 cents on the dollar in an informal negotiation, maybe even a little less than 20 cents. So that's been a huge win. We just terminated entirely the useless sales agents. You want to talk about that? Because that's a big fear. We're looking at buying a company right now, and we got the exact same issue. We got this network of sales agents into these big box stores. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the industry term is they're sales agents, I guess they are. And the whole take is that they go to, say, a Home Depot, and they're talking about, products from, 5-10 different companies. So smaller organizations can get, the story is essentially they get better representation because the store's looking at companies with bigger lists of products available. So it was always the thought that we have to have these sales agents, we have to have these sales reps in these places, and there's no way we can get into these organizations without them. And there was just no talking common sense to a different approach. That's where we were at the time.
What is a different approach? Just ignore it, right? It's not a reflection. So here, sorry, cut you off.
It's okay. It was just, when you eliminated the sales reps, it was just a case of communicating directly with these customers and understanding who our customers are and actually having contact information for these customers.
Right. Let me ask you a question. How could you tell customers that you suck and you made changes and you need to be better through a sales agent?
You can't.
Exactly.
You
Right?
just can't, because they're not, when you have that middle person in between, when you have that person
Doesn't
in
work.
between, in a sense, it's not, they're not like they're your customer, because I was told I was never allowed to speak to those customers. I had to go through the sales reps who wouldn't speak to me. So you've got
Precisely.
this
So,
layer in there.
right. So if things are ticking along nicely and you're a nice, simple company and you're making money and you don't want to be bothered talking to your customers, use a bunch of sales agents. Pay them the 10%. I got no problem with that. If you need to communicate a hard message and build a relationship and rebuild trust, you need to do that directly. That's the bottom line. And how do you do that? Well, I terminated the contracts, which may not be for everybody, might be a little harsh, that's just me. But what every business owner can do immediately is suspend every one of those contracts. You just say, I'm not terminating this, but you're on suspension. You got nothing to do. I don't want you talking to customers. You need to give me all your information. You're not entering any more commissions. And if you want to rebuild this, send me a business plan. Tell me what you're doing for me that makes me want to reinstate this contract. Okay, that's the right way to handle this.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, and there may come a day, a year from now, where Lucie and Scott sit down and say, you know what, in the US, let's talk about having a network in the Southwestern area of sales agents to attack these stores that we're not otherwise attacking, right? That could be a conversation.
Oh, it definitely could be. It's,
right.
It's just not something that's on the radar right now, because we are in contact with our customers. Our customers are thrilled. There's no need for it.
Right. Okay. So after all that, talking about our margins, we got our costs lower. We've been in direct contact with our customers. Tell me about price increases.
Price increases. We did have a small price increase for the new year, and there was no kickback from customers.
But when you say small, it was not that small. There was a lot of equalization in there.
Yeah, and that was it. Is that part of the past problems is that it just seemed that every new customer would be given a different price list. So we had, somebody might be paying $20 per product and somebody else might be paying $25 for the same product for no reason.
Right. So we cleaned up a lot of that, and on average, we got a decent little price bump, which helped our margins. And we've set ourselves up for annual revisiting of prices, in my view.
Yes.
And to think a year ago that we could have done, and by the way, that was after 6 months. We did that more or less in December.
Yeah.
I think, as I recall. So let's say we started the turnaround in June. I mean, It did not take us long to get to the point where we could start increasing prices. I did a turnaround last year in the food business. A lot of similar stories in a bigger company, but the exact same dynamics. And after a year, we have on average, I think, 12% price increases across the board with big customers, because just like roofers, you hadn't raised your prices in 5 years.
Yeah.
Because you're embarrassed, right? So there's a lot of catch up to do there, if you forgive the pun on that. All right, overheads. So that was margin overhead. We cut payroll to the bone, as you said, and we got to the point where we could grow a little bit, but not much without starting to hire at this point, which is where you want to be, right? Not only do you save on overhead, but it gives you an opportunity to change culture dramatically, right?
Yeah.
I don't like our lease and I hate our space, but we sucked that up and did not change because there was 18 months left on the lease. And now this summer, we get to decide what we're going to do about that without having to go through the legal process of breaking a lease, which is pretty tough. And now the irony is we're actually doing so well, the space actually maybe makes some sense for us. I don't know. So we'll have to revisit that. That's an undone item. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we'll just leave that where it is for now. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the overhead side, we got rid of this. We took the risk on this key man. And even though we were unable to define in advance exactly what that meant to us. Fair to say?
Definitely, yeah.
So I didn't say to you, Lucie, do you have this? Well, I may have said that to you, but Like, it was an unknown. We don't know what the last guy, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know who our customers are, right? We literally did not know. We knew the name. We knew Home Depot, right? We had a bunch of
Yeah.
a bunch of store locators and distribution centers, and that sort of like all the interchange was set up. But you know, who's the purchaser? We have no idea. We don't know his name. We don't know his email. We don't know his phone, right? So if we get rid of this key man, is he going to start calling them and bad mouthing us? Is he going to try and steal the business away from us with somebody else? Here's the decision making process, though. Will anything ever happen positive with him there?
Nope.
What choice do you have?
Yeah.
Right. And so we got rid of him. All right. So those are, did I miss any of the positive changes we've made?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we hit them all.
So here's some numbers. 2019, we did about 83% of our 2018 revenue. So our target was in the high 70s to 80s. But half of 2019 was a write-off because this turnaround didn't start till June, right? Now, mind you, we got the benefit of filling a bunch of back orders. So I gave us a little bump in revenue right away. But the bottom line is, in 2020, excepting COVID, but maybe even with COVID, we're going to be right back to where we were more or less in 2018. So it's been a 1 year kind of step back, and then we're right back to where we're top line. Contribution margin. Now, our contribution margin was about 34%, and now it's running at about the same level, 34%. So you say to yourself, well, that sucks. What about the price increase? What about the direct materials cost going down? But we're at about the same level, but we're carrying in there a brand new 9% tariff, which we didn't have before. And because we're buying in US dollars and selling predominantly in Canadian dollars, we have some US sales, but you know, the majority of our sales are Canadian still. The foreign exchange has gone way against us. And that's about a 10% hit on our contribution margin. If we were to normalize this out, take away tariffs and the FX difference, our contribution margin right now would be over 50% from 34. I mean, think about that change. I know you look at it and you say, shit, we're not making any progress on this. Okay, but it's down to 2 new items. Could you imagine if we were still at 30% or 34% and we had the tariffs and the FX go against us? We wouldn't have survived.
It would be, well, no, that's it is. It wouldn't be hard to imagine because we would cease to exist.
Yeah, right. So thank God we were able to absorb those hits. And those are 2, not only are they identifiable, they're quantifiable, and we have an action plan to deal with both of those. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm happy, even though we're not seeing it. As far as the turnaround goes, I'm happy, like more. I'm ecstatic with the results. The hard work is done on the contribution margin. Overheads are down 37.5% over last year, and we haven't changed the lease. Those are pretty big numbers. And our EBITDA, our profitability as defined by EBITDA, my personal branding people assure me no one normal on the face of the earth knows what EBITDA means. So just our profit as defined by that metric. Right now we're running about break even with those hits. And if we had adjusted for tariffs and the foreign exchange, we'd be running about a 10% profitability margin, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great number. This is in 12 months, 10 months. Those are the changes. And our fill rates are?
We ship our orders 100% within 2 to 3 business days.
100%. Fill rates should always be defined within a policy, and we're 100%, right? How are our customers reacting to all this?
I think they're in shock because before we would get a purchase order and we'd say, okay, well, I have to let you know when it's going to ship. But now when I get a purchase order, I'm very confident saying, okay, yeah, I know what's going on this week. I know what orders are going in. I know how much inventory I have. And, you know, given the day of the week, if it's later in the week, it may be, you know, thrown to a Monday. But pretty much if I get a purchase order, the warehouse is shipping it within 2 or 3 business days, which I don't think has really happened in this company for a very long time.
Ever. What's the soft side of that? Are the purchasers more happy to talk to you? Are there creative conversations about, hey, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that? Are you
Yeah,
seeing any of that
definitely.
yet?
Yeah, well, there was one of our customers that they wouldn't list us in their catalog. We were only selling to the individual store, which is more labor intensive. They then, when we met with them in Dallas in February, they took us on and listed them in their catalog. So that, opens up.
Immediately. It was like a 3-minute conversation. I was there.
Yeah, there was a lot of work leading up to it.
Really?
But,
You have to do work in advance of that?
there's a lot of conversations. And then there's another customer that I met with in December when I happened to be in Las Vegas for a vacation, but I called them up saying, hey, I'm going to pop by. And they started to see our turnaround. They started to see some of the positive things we'd implemented, but they were still a little bit skeptical. They'd, been bitten twice before, but they were the ones suggesting to us different ways that they could help us expand our distribution in the US.
Yeah. And so that's what happens. Like you think, well, I have to have industry acceptable or 100% fill rates, right? I mean, every business thinks that, and they strive to get there, and the troubled ones don't get there. But you want to fix that because you want to have the confidence to ask for price increases. You want to stop the heat on you for not delivering. But what you don't realize is the exponential add-on value of doing that. And even blows me away every time. I was at this other company and they had terrible fill rates, and in a year we went to 100% fill rates, and without doing any sales, like zero sales, revenue went up 10%, just because we're filling orders.
Yeah.
You fill an order, they send another order.
And
right?
that's it. As a seasonal business, we sort of focus on each customer bringing us about 3 turns a year. And if you're not getting their first shipment of the season until well into that season, you're only going to get 1 more turn of orders. But if you're shipping to them or preloading them, that we did this year, is that we made sure that all of our customers had basically full shelves for early on in the season, so that obviously
so you're gonna get the extra turn.
We're going to get the extra turn.
Yeah.
Definitely, because they have the product to sell at the beginning of the season, whereas before they were getting it mid or halfway through the season.
Right. Same on the supplier side, right? Like our main Chinese supplier, for example, just proactively stepped up with some COVID help for us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. Is that if you have that positive relationship, and they can see, how can they not see the changes that we've made? We've got regular shipments coming in. They're being paid when they're supposed to be paid. There's lots of communication. They know we've made it. They know we've made a change.
Yeah. So I would say that when we started this endeavor, or when you spent your first 18 months there, that was an example of negative momentum.
Yes.
This is an example of positive momentum, because I think we continue to have great IP. We're making money. Our customers are happy. I'm not saying we have no challenges, but by any definition of a turnaround, this has been a tremendous success thus far. And now we can start thinking about more interesting things from a business perspective. Acquisitions, right? New markets. You can talk in a second about the direct-to-consumer model that we're working on. So, when you get stable and you've done your turnaround, now things open up for you. So tell me about this feeling. We go back to this feeling of disorientation and stress, and like, how is it different now from what it was? Can you put words to that, or is that too hard to do?
Well, it's the best description is it's a change of night and day. I mean, it was constant doom and gloom, and nobody wanted to be here. I don't think many of us slept, just out of the pure stress of everything. And now it's we're talking about doing all of these different and interesting things and moving forward in a way with the company that was just never possible before.
Yeah. So problems for 2020, we have to deal with the tariff situation and the FX situation. And so, there's only two options for the tariff deal. There's one is you push on your supplier in China to deal with that in pricing. So in other words, you get a price reduction, or you onshore your things. Like those are your only two choices. We can't suck up 9% forever on this. So there's some combination of that. Foreign exchange is a little bit of the same in the sense that we could buy more in Canadian dollars since we sell in Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
Or we could sell more in US dollars since we buy in US dollars, which, we have a pretty dominant position in the Canadian marketplace. Our real growth is in the US. So, this is an issue that we could deal with by having flexibility in the FX, the foreign currency side of our supply chain, what we're buying in, and also by pushing to sell more in US dollars, right? So those are manageable problems that we have a plan for. Obviously 2020, right now in the micro, we're dealing with the COVID. What are we running right now? About half of what we expected?
I would say we're like sales-wise, we're about 60% of forecast.
60%?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that's it's not gonna go from 60 to 100 overnight, right? It's gonna grow up slowly. We are an essential service. We decided not to let anybody go. So we've kept operating and we're doing so well. We were even able to pay out our bonuses from 19 during COVID. And so that hopefully adds some confidence to the guys back there that everything's going well. Now, one thing I love is, what did you get to do with your self-isolation time?
You mean the direct-to-consumer side of things?
I do. You built a whole new business model for us while you were hanging out at home.
I did. What I've been working on the last couple of weeks is I built our Shopify store, but not specifically a storefront that sells all of our products. Initially, we're starting off with just promoting the ladder mount, and I've created the Shopify store as more of a sales funnel so that the customers can only go there and buy the one product. And then we're directing them there with social media. Specifically, we're using Instagram.
And we went live
today
at noon today.
Yeah. I was very nervous. I was very nervous, just tapping my fingers. Nervous, excited, because it's really something new. I mean, we've been looking at setting up an Amazon storefront, which up until all of our lockdowns, everyone was saying Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. But what people didn't realize is that with the lockdown, Amazon shut down receiving a lot of products that they didn't deem essential, so that they could only focus on providing customers with essential products. So I really question a lot of these people that claim to be multimillionaires through selling on Amazon. If Amazon's not taking your product, then your business is essentially disappeared overnight. The advantage that we have with a Shopify store is that we own the customer. Amazon, when you're dealing with Amazon, they own the customer. You're at their mercy. With our own storefront, we own our customers. We have our contact information for those customers, and we are directly responsible for the fulfillment of every single order.
And it serves the adult, so it broadens our market outside of just roofing, because that ladder mount behind you, every single person that owns a ladder and a gutter needs to own that product. Like every single homeowner, right? You're putting up your Christmas lights, you're cleaning out your gutter, the kids' frisbees on the roof, right? You need to own that product. And it's not very expensive, so you ought to own it. And so but are you going to walk into Home Depot, into the roofing contractor side to think about that? Probably not. So this broadens our market, but it has the double benefit of driving sell-through for the Home Depots. If I continue to pick on that particular customer because I love them, because we're not selling harness mounts and anchors and other things. on the, correct? On Shopify?
Correct. It's just
Right.
the ladder mount.
Right. So creating this media that drives retail non-roofers to this site, but also gives us direct access to these customers so we can market and drive sell-through. Because otherwise, how do we get sell-through and increase the turnover for our distribution partners, right? So that's the double benefit of that. And there's a triple benefit. What we want to do is start adding a bunch more value to our direct customers, or to our end users. That's a better way to put that, to the roofing contractor and to the homeowner, through content, and give you a chance to explore your love of the Crush It book. Right.
and that's it, is that, you know, when you really, the only marketing that's been done around the ladder mount is your point of display box that you would find in a Home Depot.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of retail outlets that don't have the floor space to have the box sitting there. So unless the customer comes along and picks it up and sort of thinks what it is, they're not really going to know what this product is for. And you really need to have that marketing, that advertising behind it. And the easiest way to communicate with people now is obviously through social media. And that's the route we decided to take.
All right, we're heading towards the end of our time here. I know I directed a lot of this. What about this process did we not touch on that you wanted to talk about, number one? And well, let's just start there.
About the turnaround process?
Yeah.
I would say the main thing that, you know, that's important through the whole turnaround process is communication. And that's the communication that we have with you. It's the communication that we have within the team here. And it's the communication that we have with our customers. That's been critical. It's something that never existed before. And that sort of led to our problems. But constantly, you know, between conference calls and using group chats to communicate information, you know, I would say you pretty much know what we're doing day by day. And it's not that you're coming from a micromanagement point of view. It's that we enjoy what we're doing. We love what we're doing. If something is going really well, you know, there's something positive that came out of some marking that we did, and, you know, it went in the group chat right away. So it's just that, you know, that communication is help drives that momentum. And I think the other thing that plays into momentum as well is mindset. Is that once we decided that we charted our course, we said that this is what we're going to do, it's keeping that positive mindset, you know, even on those bad days when you're dealing with, you know, when suddenly a problem crops up, it's knowing, hey, look at where we were, look at where we are, we know where we're going. This is, you know, we can see those possibilities, and it's always keeping that positive mindset in whatever we're doing. And in that place, I think that plays hand in hand with the momentum.
Exactly. Momentum. Like, you just, in your soul, you know when you're winning and you know when you're losing.
And that's it, is that every little win is we so cheer and we celebrate it because we never had them before.
Yeah, good for you. We'll follow up and do this again. Maybe we won't threaten the quarterly because that doesn't work. But and besides, I think, you know, the bulk of the turnaround. Now we're going to talk about positive things, and we're going to talk about how we deal with our challenges in 2020 and the new things that we've done. So maybe about 6 months, we'll do a half-year check-in. That sound fair?
Definitely, yeah.
How do people find Roofers World and Lucie?
You can find us. Our main company website is roofersworld.com. If you want to find out more about the ladder mount, you can find that on our store, roofersworldstore.com. You can find us on Instagram, again, Roofers World. And if you're looking at connecting with me, you can always find me on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. Perfect. Under Lucie Quigley.
Lucie Quigley.
And I'll reinforce that in the notes and in the intro I do for this. Anything else? Any parting?
Cheers.
Cheers again. Thank you so much, Lucie, for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
You guys, thank you for listening. to Martinis with Scott. It's a show about winning momentum in business and in life. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please subscribe. We'll talk to you all later.